I always thought the left, or Democrats, were supposed to be the party of empathy, the party of caring, and yet they're burning down cars, they're firebombing dealerships, they're
The American right wing currently has the largest news channel, controls 2 of the world's biggest social media apps, all 3 branches of government, and have billions behind their YouTube channels. They claim they're the underdogs and that the deep state and the media is against them, while they have the richest men in the world sit behind their president and influence American policy. If Trump's policies are so beneficial to the working class, and DEI and wokeness will be defeated while America is made great again, why the fuck do they whine so much?
I want these people to suffer, because that's what they did to me. I want to set an example. Get rid of these people, put them, completely out of their jobs. Get rid of them. Make an example of them. Say, listen, this is what happens.
When we win, do not forget that these people want you broke, dead, your kids violated and brainwashed, and they think it's funny. Sir, this is GameStop. We sell Funko Pops here. Well, the answer to why they whine so much is because they don't actually care about policy, improving America, or even their own well-being. They just care about revenge, outrage culture, and maintaining their victim complexes. Now, of course, I can already see the comment section. Cry, liberal. We had 4 years of Biden. It's actually an ancient Buddhist symbol. So what do I mean by all this?
America goes woke and abandons all common sense. Tucker Carlson highlights how one country's fighting back against far-left policies.
Conservatives often represent themselves as countercultural figures who oppose what they view as a dominant progressive establishment. They frame themselves as rebels, challenging the so-called liberal elite and fighting to preserve traditional values. This framing of themselves as outsiders or disruptors to the system is part of the political identity they cultivate. Furthermore, it fuels a narrative that appeals to their base, particularly in a time when the culture war is basically everywhere, whether you're right or left.
First of all, what is the woke mind virus? And if we don't deal with this, nothing else can get done.
However, this countercultural image is a sham, it's a whoopty, it's a
Gazy fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust.
In practice, conservatives often end up preserving the very structures they claim to be resisting. While they might speak out against certain elements of society, from wokeness to government overreach, many of the policies they advocate for ultimately reinforce the status quo, or they're only against something if it's Democrats in power. For example, I would consider myself a pretty in-shape guy who eats pretty healthy. Although I hate RFK Jr. for unrelated reasons, I support his Make America Healthy sentiment. However, when Michelle Obama did the same thing, and keep in mind I was like 12 but still in the school system.
I'm 56 years old. Damn!
But when Michelle said similar things, right-wingers freaked out and fear-mongered her.
Get your damn hands off my fries, lady. If I want to be a fatty and shovel french fries all day long, that is my choice.
Please, do you think the government should regulate the ingredients in the food we eat?
Can't we make our own decision about whether or not we want to salt our food?
All right, an Obama government obesity task force. Does every American family need a dietitian appointed by the government to tell them that this food is going to make you fat and this food is not?
But when RFK says something like French fries should be made in beef tallow, everybody loses their mind and calls him the second coming of Jesus Christ of the health world.
They will be frying their French fries in beef tallow rather than seed oil. 50% of American adults, 50% of teens are overweight and obese. We have an obesity epidemic in this country.
An Obama government obesity task force.
Suddenly, when it's a politician on your team that you support, then it's okay for government officials to influence diets and food. However, this hypocrisy doesn't really surprise me because, as I said, I'm into fitness and eating healthy, and I noticed that a lot of social media pages are kind of drifting into the right-wing grift of saying, oh, the liberal establishment doesn't want you to eat like this, the government wants to poison you, which is kind of true to an extent for the government part, but it's not like liberals are blocking you from eating steak and eggs or exercising. Like, yeah, you're surely dismantling the liberal power system by having a wife and kids and going to church. You really own them by going to the gym and eating healthy. Like, that's not anti-establishment stuff. That's just stuff you're doing in your life. The right-wing victim complex is fueled by the constant narrative that the left is the source of all their problems and that they're oppressed by them, even when they hold significant power in society. They'll go on and on about how they're being silenced or cancelled on their multi-million-dollar shows, even though they have platforms, media outlets, and political influence that only so many of us could dream of. And furthermore, by framing themselves as the ones under attack, they create a situation where they don't really have to take responsibility for any of their actions or words. They flip any criticisms or consequences from their action onto the left by saying, hey, why are you guys being mean to me because of my intolerance and obvious attempts at dividing you guys? Aren't you guys supposed to be tolerant?
I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm gonna be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
By painting themselves as the poor underdogs against the mean, tyrannical left, they don't have to confront their own flaws or engage with the criticisms that could hold them accountable. So in a way, they depend on the existence of the left, even if it's a fabricated threat, in order to maintain this narrative of victimization. It keeps their followers united over a common enemy, their actions unchecked, and their agenda moving forward without serious opposition. Although I'm a leftist, I want there to be some nuance for this video. I don't want it to be just me ranting and always shitting on the right and acting like the left shit doesn't stink sometimes. Of course, as a leftist, I see things like misogyny, racism, transphobia, homophobia, etc. as valid threats versus Western women, wokeness, or Marvel making Nightcrawler a Guatemalan in their remake or something.
Put them, like, completely out of their jobs. Get rid of them. Make an example of them. Say, listen, this is what happens.
But progressives do have batshit takes sometimes, and also corporations do pander. Some things we see eye to eye on, but for different reasons. Like, for example, I think lazy race swaps are just attempts to get controversy for corporations and to pander. And then when you finally think you have common ground with them on this issue, they put George Floyd's face onto a random black character in a video game, so much for the tolerant right, I guess. But on a bigger scale, the endgame of the two-party system in the United States, right and left, quote unquote, isn't to benefit the working class, but rather to manufacture consent and propaganda for politicians in the capitalist class to do whatever is in their interest. If the red president is just going to undo everything that the blue president did and vice versa, then what are the long-term benefits for the working class? Well, the answer is simple. There aren't many that fit into the system of capitalism and the two-party system, so they have to jingle keys in our face to keep us entertained. Sure, we're spending $800 billion on our military despite having no countries declare war on us in decades, but at least we don't have DEI and wokeness anymore. We keep falling behind in education and housing, but did you notice that transgenders can't enlist and that it's called the Gulf of America now? Sure, people are glued to phones and recording record levels of loneliness, but did you know that orange man looks stupid? We should all wear pink to show those fascists what for. And not to get too political on this channel, but Lenin once wrote, "The capitalists strive to sow and ferment hatred between workers of different faiths, different nations, and different races, and it's aged like wine. Regardless of who is in power, the anger continues to be exploited and perpetuated, especially among the right. To MAGA and the right wing, all of the success of the right in positions of power and political discourse are basically useless as long as the enemy remains. It doesn't matter if Trump, Vance, or Elon are president, as long as I can go home, go on YouTube, and have a dating podcaster tell me that liberalism and wokeness is ruining Western women, and that's the reason why I'm single."
There's someone that maybe a guy wouldn't want to marry because you lost your virginity. That was the cultural understanding, like, the 50s and the 60s. And then in the 70s, you had this fourth wave of feminism that reared its ugly head and started associating sexual promiscuity to freedom, and things completely flipped. Again, I'm just giving you historical analysis of what happened in the classroom.
Hoflation
theory. I believe, the women today are very low value.
Yeah, and Candace is definitely one of them. Their victim complex, despite winning so much in the recent years, is kind of reminiscent of a dog chasing a car and finally catching up to it. Conservatives have gained so much power that they no longer know what to do with it and who to scapegoat. The media's alleged bias against conservatives is harder to argue now when platforms like Joe Rogan's podcast, Facebook, and Instagram, once seen as part of the liberal establishment, now cater to conservative voices. Even with the harsh immigration policies and mass deportations that were implemented, the right wing finds itself grappling with the fact that their complaints no longer fit the reality of their political victories. Yet, despite these contradictions, the fear and anger still persists. The right wing still needs an outlet for their frustrations. However, it's a perpetual cycle of outrage aimed at distracting from the real issues at hand and ensuring that the capitalist class continues to pull the strings behind the scenes. I think this also explains why we're seeing such a mainstream revitalization of Nazism, whether it's irony or not. The cool counterculture position isn't simply to be a Republican anymore, or even punk. It needs to be edgy, a grand conspiracy where it's a holy war between good and evil, and how every minority and religion beside yours is the enemy that needs to be kept away. Having long, shaggy hair and punk outfits aren't considered to be cool and edgy anymore, so the envelope has to be pushed in the opposite direction and even more radically. I also suspect that a non-zero number of them know that certain policies would be disastrous, but they care too much about owning the libs or beating wokeness While some criticisms and concerns from the right are valid in my opinion, the focus on fighting against cultural changes or individual groups ultimately diverts attention away from larger systems and power structures. Rather than perpetuating a cycle of division by attacking groups or ideas that seem threatening to their worldview, it would be more beneficial for the right to turn their attention to the broader systems that maintain power. The real adversaries are not wokeness or transgender rights or DEI, but the economic and political systems that favor the wealthy and powerful while leaving the working class to struggle. The same structures that limit access to affordable healthcare, housing, and education are the ones that keep everyday people disenfranchised, regardless of their political beliefs or the political beliefs of those in power. By focusing on dismantling these power structures, capitalism, corporate monopolies, and entrenched political elites, the right wing could find common ground with working class individuals across the political spectrum. Instead of vilifying each other and always playing the victim, people could unite against the systems that perpetuate their suffering, recognizing that the true enemy is not each other, but the powerful few who exploit the masses for their own gain. And if you don't believe me, this article headline says it all. Anyways, if you got this far, thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I should have some more videos on the way. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Bye.